Wow, I am so happy to be here right now and recording this tutorial. You know, I originally started doing this as a way for me to kind of take notes on procedures and things that I've done in After Effects and Cinema 4D when I've figured things out, and a way for me to remember this stuff was to write it down and to make it available for myself as like a back catalog, kind of like a wiki. Well, I kind of said, hey, why don't I expand on this and make it available to everybody in a way that's a little bit more entertaining. So without further ado, here's my first video tutorial. My first example that I'm going to be showing to you is a way to spawn particles off of other particles. And it sounds really simple, and I looked online and people were telling me to go to the content browser and use an already set up espresso rig. And although that sounds great, the problem with most of the content browser setups is if you go into here and you say, oh, collision, emitter, I want to add this thing to my scene. Unless you are amazing at espresso, this stuff is going to become over your head if you want to add or alter it in any way. I decided to come up with my own solution, and the solution actually to me seems like a little bit of a shortcut. Here's what I came up with. We've got an object, it's emitting red particles, and from those red particles are emitting white particles. If we go here into the espresso setup, we can come in here and we can add in another box, change it to an editable polygon, and we can drag it in, and now we've got the particles emitting on the box. So the whole setup is pretty straightforward and extremely dynamic. If we wanted to, we could create user data where you just drag in and drop the objects and stuff, and maybe we can do that in a later tutorial, but for now I want to keep it simple. So we'll go ahead and add back that sphere. Get rid of the cube. So this is what we're going to be creating now. This can be used in a lot of types of ways. For example, this could be a firework. We've got the red particles could be a rocket, and the white particles could be the explosion afterwards. Or we could have the red particles be condensation on a can, and the white particles could be the drips coming down. Granted, we don't have any gravity in this situation, but that can all be expanded. So why don't we go ahead and try and build this thing from scratch. So why don't you start out with opening up a new scene, Command N, or Control N if you're on a PC, and we'll start off by creating a null object which we're going to attach all of our espresso to. And I like to label this espresso, and we're going to right click, tag espresso. Now I've docked everything and cleaned up my environment to suit this tutorial. I like to do that. You can come in here into a layout and save it out as a layout, like an espresso layout if you like. One thing that this way, by docking it, and I'm hoping that they fix it in version 15 next year, because they seem to be producing a new cinema every year now, is that if you click on calculate animation refresh, it doesn't really animate too well. If I come in here and I go into general and I do result, this number doesn't get updated on the fly when it's docked. Don't know why, but that's the problem, Maxon. Please fix that for us. So our first thing that we're going to do is we're going to create a shape. It could be any shape. What looks good here? Let's do a capsule. We're going to be eating a big giant pill here. We're going to do the theme of, I think that was called Matrix. People running around in trench coats eating pills, listening to techno music. I don't know where that's going, but anyways. The first thing that we're going to need to do here is we can either right click, make editable, or on our keyboard just hit C. And that should turn it into an editable shape. We're going to drag it into our window here. And next, we're going to right click, create a new node, and this is going to be our first particle emitter. It's going to be the matter waves. Now, matter waves allows you to emit particles off an object. Just simply drag the object into the object drop-in. Problem with this is it lacks expandability, so I've kind of gotten out of the habit of using that, and I just directly connect it from my object into the object input window. And if I create another object, I can literally just drag and drop it onto this, and I can see what's going on inside the Espresso at all times, and I'm not having to click on P matters waves and look in here. And if you notice, the object drop-in has now disappeared, so it's not available. It's being controlled through Espresso. Next, we need to set up some groups. We know that we need two particle groups, one emitting onto the surface and one emitting off of the particle. So to do that, we're going to go to Simulate tab, Thinking Particles, Particle Settings. And we're going to quickly just right click on all, add. And the first one, we're going to leave it red, and particle group 2, blue. So particle group 1 is going to be our first. So to do, pass the particle P matter waves to a group, all we do is new node, Thinking Particles, Standard, Group. And we're going to just drag from here to here and drag this group onto all to change that to group 1. So that's actually all we need to do for the first step. So everything's plugged in. Looks crazy. Let's change the life of each particle to something a little shorter, and we're going to change the speed down to 0. So now the particles are emitting off of the surface and they're sticking and they're not going anywhere. The next thing we'll do is we'll reduce this down to 20 so we get a nice kind of a disco-y effect there on the pill. We're making a disco pill. So then the next thing that we're going to need to do is we're going to pass this particle group off to another particle group. So to do that, we're going to go New, Thinking Particle, P pass. We're going to drag particle group 1 into another particle group, which is going to be a P storm. P storm is your standard emitter that allows you to plug in position coordinates. So we're going to plug in, you can't just pass this into here. The way you need to do it is you need to find the position of these red particles, and to do that, Thinking Particles, we're going to go to a helper node and get the data of that group. And from that group, we can filter each of these particles using get data. We can get age, alignment, factor, group, life, mass, and then bam, there's position. So we've filtered through the position information into the emitter position. So we're going to hide the capsule. Now we notice that it's finding the position fine. The problem is that duplicated particle emitter is coming from the center, but the circumference is too wide. So what we're going to need to do is click into the P-storm node and change the size of that emitter to 0 and 0. So now we're getting somewhere. Let's also change the X and Y rotation values to 360. So it's going to rotate from all directions. Also, let's shorten life here just for demo purposes, and also change the speed to something a little bit slower and the amount of particles down to something a little more manageable. Okay, so now we're getting somewhere. The next thing that we're going to want to do is pass these white particles into a group. Right now they're being thrown back from group 1 by default to all. So if we wanted to, let's say, add gravity to this P-storm, we'd actually be adding it to the red ones as well, because they fall within the all group. So let's go ahead and pass into a group. So thinking particles, standard group like we did before. Dragging group 2, because that's what we want it to be part of. Particle birth. So now we have particles emitting from red particles. Now, right now, it just seems like they're just emitting constantly. What if we wanted to make it more like a firework effect? To do that, we need another node to pass from particle group 1. Similar to how we got P get data, we need to actually find the life of that particle. So let's go into here and go into thinking particles, condition P age. So we're going to take particle group 1, pass it into the particle, and we need to turn on to on. And now by default, it actually is what we are wanting. When the particle is passed through here, particle is born, it's on, then it's off, and it's passed to group 2. So let's go ahead and crank up this to 30. So now we should get kind of a firework effect. And you can also change this instead of it being born to absolute, and you could change this to 2 if you want a little bit of a longer duration. It's all up to you. Also, since we've passed particle group 2 into a group, we can add some dynamics to it. So let's add some gravity here. So we're going to go to null, initiator, P pass, and we're going to drag group 2. So we're going to P group into P pass, gravity. Now you notice you don't see anything. What we do need to do is add a null that's going to act as gravity. And we need to point it downward or into the direction you want gravity. It could be any direction. And drag the gravity null onto the node. And now we should get a falling effect. And it's totally dynamic. We can come in here, change the count. So now we have lots of red particles emitting particles off of that surface, down to just a few. So I hope that you guys can see the usefulness in this and the simplicity of this rig. If you guys have any questions, please comment, leave a message, email me, and I'll address it in the next tutorial. I hope you guys found this useful, and thank you.